Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. As the clock ticks towards a possible strike, Air Canada flight attendants hold a day of action, sharing their biggest concerns.
We have had enough. We have waited 10 years to have a difference made. We are not paid until the wheels push back.
Plus, another serious fatal collision in Langley leaves one dead.
It's the third accident in 8 days, and my heart goes out to the family and everyone involved in this.
And sizzling hot as heat warnings grip much of southern BC, what it means for BC's wildfires and how people are keeping cool.
It's the warmest day we've had so far since we've been here, so
I love it. It's not summer without it.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Baneet Braich, and thank you for joining us. Air Canada flight attendants rallied at 4 major airports across the country today, including at Vancouver International Airport. As Pinky Wong reports, low pay and unpaid work are in focus as a strike could start this week.
More than 400 Air Canada flight attendants with QP are picketing here at YVR Airport this morning. The union says the National Day of Action is not a strike, but an opportunity to show support for the bargaining committee. It's being held at 4 airports across the country, including YVR, which is Canada's second busiest airport based on passenger numbers. Members at the demonstration today are holding signs saying unpaid equals unfair and poverty wages is un-Canadian.
We have had enough. We have waited 10 years to have a difference made.
Around 2,400 Air Canada flight attendants in Vancouver may go on strike as early as this Saturday. QP says this mobilization is to raise awareness among Canadians about ongoing issues related to their working conditions.
All of our duties as we are on board, safety, medical, anytime we're doing our briefings, we are unpaid. We are not paid until the wheels push back. Until that point, we could be on there for hours, assisting passengers.
Some travelers at YVR today are in solidarity with the flight attendants.
I feel for them. I think they should be paid the moment they arrive at the airport until the moment they leave, and not just when the airplane's in motion. It doesn't make sense.
I usually focus on the cheapest flight, but if they are striking, I will pay more for not to fly with them.
I always support people that strike and do it via the right processes, so it's going to delay us being in Halifax for a few days for better pay for the staff. I'd say we'll take that.
QP says they could issue a 72-hour strike notice, and a strike may happen on August 16th, the soonest if an agreement hasn't reached. Air Canada says demonstrations of this nature are common during negotiations. The airline operator says it is focused on achieving an agreement that would recognize their flight attendants and make them the best paid in the country without any disruption to travel. Pinky Wong, CBC News, Richmond.
Langley RCMP are investigating the latest in a string of fatal crashes. Now, this time it's at the intersection of 256th Street and 56th Avenue. Amelia John has been following these incidents, and I spoke with her earlier. Amelia, what do we know about this latest crash?
It happened around 8:30. Photos from the scene show a badly damaged black vehicle and a semi-truck on its side behind police tape. This is a rural intersection that's located just south of Highway 1. The route is often congested because it is a major route. It's very busy with trucks, and there's a widening project underway. Construction has been ongoing for years, and some drivers are now turning to alternate side routes to get away from some of the delays and heavy traffic.
A lot of people are driving in new areas. They're just trying to get out of that congestion on the highway, so they take a detour, and then someone tries to go and pass them. There's a lot of situations that happen, and we just really need this Highway 1 to be over and done with.
Amelia, I know we've been reporting about fatal crashes for a bit this month. What are officials saying about, the sudden frequency of these crashes?
Langley RCMP tells us that this is the third fatal collision they've been called to in 8 days. And those in the community say something has to change. We spoke with a former firefighter who's also a local politician who works to prevent distracted driving.
Pay attention to your driving. Enjoy your driving, okay? Just don't underestimate how things can go wrong.
On August 3rd, there was another deadly collision on Highway 1 and 264th. Then there was last Wednesday's fatal at 200th Street and 80th Avenue. RCMP haven't confirmed what may have factored into the latest crash, but the Integrated Collision Analysis and Reconstruction Service has been called in to help.
And that is Amelia John. Thank you. A Nanaimo couple who amassed thousands of followers on YouTube where they documented their off-road adventures has died. Castle Search and Rescue confirmed that the incident occurred on August 7th on a Forest Service road near Trout Lake in the West Kootenays. Rescue teams found one person ejected from the vehicle showing no signs of life. The other person was taken to hospital where they died. This official warns those off-roading in remote areas need to be prepared.
When you go into the high alpine, the first immediate challenge is that we can't get to you as quickly as we would be able to if you were on a highway. So make sure to a large extent you're able to self-rescue, particularly if there's more than one of you, and do make sure you have the right equipment to do so.
Officials are unsure if that couple was filming at the time of the incident. The province has announced plans to appeal a Supreme Court decision that came down on Friday. It ruled in favor of the Cowichan tribes winning back fishing rights and title for a portion of historic lands in Richmond. Claire Palmer has more.
After 500 days of litigation, the Cowichan Nation, made up of Cowichan tribes, Stamanis First Nation, Penelakut Tribe, Halalt First Nation, and Layaxan First Nation, celebrated Friday's court decision, which determined fishing rights and title for part of the land used by their ancestors should be returned.
The courts remain an option for First Nations when we are not heard and our rights are ignored. We did not pursue this case with malice or ill will towards others.
While Cowichan Nations currently occupy central Vancouver, the land claim is for 7.5 square kilometers at the mouth of the Fraser River. The case is based on Cowichan Nation Aboriginal title to approximately 1,846 acres of traditional village and surrounding lands on the south shore of Lulu Island, now in the city of Richmond.
Someday we would someday we'll be back on the river doing what our ancestors did, fish, gathered, and had the opportunity to flourish in the south arm of the Fraser River. And knowing that the next generations of our communities will have the opportunity to do what our ancestors did.
Celebrations were short-lived, however, as mere hours later, BC's Attorney General announced the province will appeal the decision and ask for stay on the implementation of the court decision.
We disagree with the decision and that British Columbia will be filing an appeal and seeking a stay to pause implementation until the appeal is resolved.
The Musqueam First Nation are amongst those in opposition to the decision, saying in a statement that the court's decision ignores traditional governance practices which have guided intercommunity relationships since time immemorial. The court recognizes that the case raised complex and novel issues. The Cowichan Nation is not seeking to recover any privately held lands in the court case. For these lands, it's seeking a negotiated reconciliation with the government. Claire Palmer, CBC News, Duncan.
There are heat warnings for many places across southern BC, and people are looking for ways to keep cool. Chad Pawson has been out talking to people under the sun.
Floating, swimming, or kayaking, all good ways to keep cool in Howe Sound, where locals and tourists are thankful for the heat and all the ways to enjoy it.
Eat ice cream.
A lot of it?
As much as I'm allowed to, I guess.
I love it. It's not summer without it.
This is perfect weather for us. So, you know, it's not too hot. Yeah. We're used to 95, 100 degree Fahrenheit weather, so this is nice.
The warmest day we've had so far since we've been here.
The good weather vibes comes with some caution, however. A good chunk of southern BC is under a heat warning from Environment Canada. Squamish could get up to 33 degrees Celsius, Kamloops up to 34, Port Alberni on the island up to 35. Several days of these hot temperatures are expected. It has the attention of wildfire officials.
It does tend to make our fuels on the forest floor more susceptible to new starts, whether they be from lightning or from human causes. So when we have periods of extreme heat like we're experiencing right now across the southern interior, that is obviously something that we watch very closely.
The hot, dry weather is not expected to last, however, with cooler temperatures and rain set to roll in later in the week and into the weekend. So while staying cool and safe from the sun is the need now, there are those still trying to make the most of it. Chad Pawson, CBC News, West Vancouver.
The return to hot, dry weather is expected to intensify wildfire behavior, but officials say there is some good news. So the only wildfire of note is still the Wesley Ridge fire on Vancouver Island. Officials say it is now being held at 6 square kilometers, and residents could soon start returning home. Meanwhile, a wildfire east of Kelowna is now considered held, and the affected residents have been told they can return home. And Steve Jung joins us now with a first look at the weather. Steve, we are baking out there.
For sure, Baneet, and like we heard from Chad, it's hot, but it's also dry. And we also, depending on where you are in the province, over the next couple of days, expecting quite some high winds, very gusty winds, up to 50 kilometers an hour, such as in Victoria and also up north in Fort Nelson. BC Wildfire Service is concerned that combined with the hot and dry temperatures, this could intensify fire behavior on fires still burning around BC. And here we see the effects of the ridge of high pressure that's bringing higher than seasonal temperatures, 30-plus temperatures in Whistler, Squamish, Nanaimo, and Port Alberni. And we're expecting this to taper off hopefully around Wednesday. More on that later in the show.
Thank you, Steve. We will check back in with you. And Lost Lagoon in Vancouver Stanley Park is known to be scenic and relaxing. But this year, it's looking quite swampy. As Rafferty Baker reports, another algae bloom is a sign that the ecosystem is in bad shape.
It's never been a body of water Vancouverites turn to for a swim, but with a thick algal bloom covering large sections of Lost Lagoon, the water looks downright swampy.
My first impression is I don't like it.
Well, it's not as beautiful, obviously, as seeing the swans and the ducks and no algae.
It doesn't look too healthy, to be honest.
It has become a seasonal cycle. Each summer, the algae blooms. But for regular visitors and neighbors like Stephanie Ryan, it's never been this bad.
It does seem like one of the worst. It seems really big and like the algae is really thriving.
Ryan's apartment overlooks the lagoon. She remembers previous years, like in 2022, when a bunch of carp showed up dead. But this year, she says it's different, with orange growth on the surface. When the wind blows the right way, you can even get a waft of the decomposing slurry.
It is disgusting, and frankly, it's sort of a shame that the bloom's happening now in peak tourism season. There's like 1 million people biking around the lagoon every day, and this is what they get to see.
The bloom is now a seasonal fixture, but it wasn't always like this.
There was a bridge into Stanley Park, but there was still full tidal flows.
Lost Lagoon used to actually be an ocean lagoon, connected to Cole Harbor. Local First Nations had settlements here, and shellfish was harvested. It would flush out to the sea daily. A little more than 100 years ago, a dam was built. The causeway went in, connecting downtown to Stanley Park, and eventually the Lionsgate Bridge. Now the brackish lake is stagnant, about 1 meter deep all the way across.
Now, in the condition that it's in, and due to decisions made in the past, we have a lake that's in a very unhealthy condition.
Townsend says the shallow depth means it's particularly vulnerable to warm spells and nutrient imbalances. He says it's hard to assess how this year's bloom compares to previous years, but he says the park board has received more complaints about it than ever before. The fix? Well, it could be expensive.
The projects that we're talking about are significant infrastructure projects. They are not easy fixes of putting in a fountain or harvesting the algae.
Townsend says one of the options, at one point estimated to cost $20 million, is to reconnect the lagoon with the ocean. He says the park board will discuss that with local First Nations and other levels of government.
It does take time to turn back the clock on some of these ecosystem changes, but I believe it's possible.
Until a drastic intervention at Lost Lagoon, we can expect the algae to keep coming back each summer. Rafferty Baker, CBC News, Vancouver.
It's a battle between land and sea. More from CBC's search for BC's best symbol right after this. A BC man has been found alive after he went missing for 9 days in the woods. Georgie Smythe shows us what led to his rescue.
A refuge and a plea in the northern BC wilderness set on the edge of a small lake. But it was this almost invisible SOS written in the mud that led to the improbable rescue of a man missing for 9 days in the remote Caribou region. Help signs visible from the air, all written by 39-year-old Andrew Barber. He was last seen with his pickup truck near Castle Rock at the end of last month, between the cities of Williams Lake and Quesnel, and was eventually found by this pond, just in time, say rescuers.
He was in poor health. He was having a hard time standing. I don't know that he would have made it another 24 hours without us recovering him.
Maps by search and rescue teams showed just how many times crews flew in over the terrain looking for anything until they saw a flit of light.
the observers spotted a glint of sunshine off the windshield from the truck. So they were able to zoom in and closer, and they did locate the truck.
About an hour later, they saw the SOS sign.
That's when they spotted a male standing by a lake, by a big rock with help written on it.
Baba, who had no food and was drinking from the pond, was taken to hospital and is recovering. Surviving getting lost is achievable, say wilderness pros.
First admit, I'm lost. Stay put, and then build a fire, build a shelter, get water, wait for help, and signal and make yourself as visible as possible.
Advice that in this case proved life-saving. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
This summer, we've been asking British Columbians to weigh in on the province's best symbol. And today's matchup is the orca versus the red cedar. And here's what some people had to say.
And you have the orca and the red cedar in front of you. Which is your choice?
Red cedar.
Now, why did you choose red cedar?
I feel that it just encompasses BC and its beautiful nature.
I think it's an important tree for our province, and one that we should be planting more often because it's drought resistant.
I go orca.
Oh yeah, I go orca,
Yeah.
big time orca.
And I feel like nature is also something well represented to me, and red cedar is something that I've seen a lot here.
I think the orca just has such like strong iconography in like First Nations art. I think also just orcas bully around yachts. Who doesn't love that? That's amazing.
So this matchup is part of the Final Four, which includes the orca and red cedar, as you just heard, as well as the totem pole and the BC flag. And CBC's bracket master, Justin McElroy, has more on that competition.
On Saturna Island, there's no question what British Columbia's best symbol is.
I love orcas.
They're so iconic.
It is amazing to see them.
My grandson is 2 and he goes, the whales, the whales.
It was just amazing to see wildlife enjoying themselves.
Orcas are beautiful.
In the search for BC's best symbol, the orca has reached the Final Four. It faces the western red cedar. But whether or not the orca moves on, they'll keep showing up here.
They come right by the cliff, so they can be within like a few meters of the cliff, and you can see them jumping out of the water.
The Southern Gulf Islands Whale Sighting Network monitors these waters, providing data that can help with conservation efforts.
What I fear is that we are driving them from their traditional habitat because of the noise, because of the chemical pollution, and especially because we are creating a situation where there isn't going to be enough food.
That worry for their future, mixed with appreciation for what orcas are and how they are viewed worldwide.
Well, it is an icon for those of us who live on the coast, but more than that, I think people who come from the interior or come from Toronto come and want to see an orca because it is so iconic.
An iconic symbol of this province, and maybe the best one. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Saturna Island.
A hot day at the White Rock Pier today with families enjoying the splash park. Steve Young has your full BC-wide forecast coming up. Health officials in China are dealing with an outbreak of a viral infection called Chikungunya. The outbreak has sickened over 8,000 people in the southern part of the country in just a few weeks. So far, no signs of the illness in BC. But if you travel to China, CBC's medical columnist Dr. Melissa Lem has some tips to stay safe. Dr. Lem, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Baneet.
Now, I just want to start off by asking you, how is the virus transmitted, and can it be passed person to person?
Well, Baneet, the vast majority of cases happen when the chikungunya virus is transmitted through mosquito bites, as you mentioned, in countries where it's endemic, like in Africa or South America or in China right now, or where there are active outbreaks like we've seen before in Europe. And when a person who's infected with chikungunya is bitten by a mosquito that can carry it, because not all mosquito species can carry it, it can then infect another human being by biting them. And it's also very occasionally transmitted from a pregnant person to their fetus, mostly during the second or third trimesters. And there have been a very few rare documented cases of when lab workers handling blood samples or drawing blood from an infected patient have acquired it. Thankfully, so far, we haven't seen any cases acquired locally from mosquitoes within Canada. We've only seen travel-acquired cases here. But as climate change shifts the distribution of mosquitoes, we do actually have a small population of those risky kinds of mosquitoes in Canada that could grow with time. There is a chance that down the road we could see chikungunya outbreaks here.
And Canada has issued a level 2 advisory for those who travel to those particular areas of concern in China, so Foshan and the Guangdong province. How can you protect yourself if you are deciding to travel there?
Well, the first thing I would recommend if you're traveling anywhere outside North America is to do some research on approved websites like Health Canada's website or the Center for Disease Control in the US, and consult with a travel medicine clinic about which vaccines you might need, because there are lots of vaccine-preventable infectious diseases out there that we don't have in Canada. In the case of chikungunya, you could consider getting vaccinated against it because there is an approved vaccine in Canada, even though it's not very common. And then, of course, avoid getting bitten by mosquitoes as much as you can. Use bug spray, cover up your skin with light-colored and loose clothing, cover up your feet where you don't often notice mosquitoes by wearing socks and closed-toed shoes. And then also remember at nighttime to sleep under mosquito nets, because chikungunya is transmitted by both day and night biting mosquitoes. And last but not least, be especially careful if you're in a higher risk group for more severe disease, including babies, including pregnant people because of the risk of transmission to their babies, and then also older adults with pre-existing conditions.
And Dr. Lem, just in the case that someone is bitten, what are some symptoms to watch out for? How serious is this illness?
Well, first of all, after you get bitten by an infected mosquito, it takes an average of 4 to 7 days to develop symptoms, and there is a very high attack rate. About 80% of people infected with chikungunya will go on to develop symptoms, and it can be very serious and life-threatening, but the majority of people do recover within 1 to 2 weeks. So the classic initial presentation is a sudden, really high fever over 39 degrees Celsius with severe joint pain, often in the small joints of your ankles and your hands and your wrists, but sometimes in larger joints like your knees and shoulders. And then other common symptoms include headache, nausea, fatigue, muscle pain, and rash. Some people, unfortunately, can go on to develop joint pain that lasts for months or even years, called chronic chikungunya. And in fact, the name chikungunya comes from a word in Tanzania that translates into that which bends up, which refers to this bent up posture that people assume when they're experiencing that intense joint pain. So it's definitely something you don't want to catch.
And are there any treatments for this?
Just supportive treatments. There are currently no directed cures or treatments for chikungunya, but if you're in another country, you're experiencing those severe symptoms, don't hesitate to go to a hospital for treatment.
Well, thank you so much for those tips. That's CBC's medical columnist, Dr. Melissa Lem. In the U.S., Donald Trump has a new target, announcing that he's taking over Washington's police force and deploying the National Guard to the streets of the U.S. Capitol, citing what he calls a public safety emergency. But as Ashley Burke explains, the data tells a different story.
Wow. Donald Trump's portrayal of the U.S. Capitol, extraordinary.
Our capital city has been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, roving mobs of wild youth. drugged out maniacs and homeless people, and we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're not going to take it.
The U.S. president trying to make the case Washington is a crime-infested wasteland.
Not getting better, it's getting worse.
Far more dangerous, he says, than places like Baghdad, and wanted to make sure journalists in the room heard him.
And you people are victims of it, too. You know, you're reporters. You don't want to get mugged and raped and shot and killed.
Trump declared a public safety emergency and is calling in hundreds of National Guard soldiers, just like he did in California after protests against immigration raids.
You will see them flowing into the streets of Washington in the coming week. They will be strong. They will be tough.
Some parts of Washington have historically had some of the highest crime rates in the U.S. But officials in Washington say last year violent crime hit a 30-year low. So far this year, there have been about 1,600 incidents. Local police say that's a 26% drop over 2024.
We're not experiencing a spike in crime, but a decrease in crime.
Trump is also moving to put Washington police under direct federal control, part of a battle for power with local officials.
We need to go after the D.C. Council and their absurd laws.
Free D.C. But local residents say it's what Trump's doing that's absurd.
It's so clear, and it's just so crazy that the people around him aren't seeing that, like, dude, you can't do this.
This is not about crime. This is about control.
And experts warn it's a dangerous move.
It's one of the first steps we see towards autocracy in other countries around the world, mobilizing the military to try to control the civilian population.
That's CBC's Ashley Burke reporting there. Now, amid the ongoing trade war with the U.S., pickle lovers, you may no longer find your favorites at the store. The dispute is changing not just how Canadians shop, but what stores are selling. And Julia Wong explains why a popular pickle brand is off some shelves.
For Crystal Porcher, pickles are kind of a big deal. The Edmonton woman snacks on them at least twice a week.
I mean, always with a grilled cheese. Always. You have a pickle. It's classic.
But in many grocery stores across Canada, a jarring sight. The iconic Bix pickles are not available anymore due to unfortunate tariff impacts.
We've got a border dispute that just makes that transfer back and forth across the border expensive.
Every year, Treehouse Foods buys its lids and 11 million pounds of cucumbers from Ontario. But assembly happens in the U.S. Now, when they come back into Canada, Ottawa slaps the pickles with a 25% retaliatory tariff.
That has, in some cases, really inhibited the retailer's availability to justify carrying them.
Bix is only sold in Canada, so the company isn't relishing the dragged-out trade war. Sales are down about 25% in the last 3 months, putting the company in, well, a bit of a pickle.
And that's less cucumbers and less caps, things we'll buy in Ontario.
Amid the ongoing trade war, patriotism has swelled, but that could backfire in some cases, experts say.
That Buy Canadian is sort of coming back to bite, pardon the pun, the Canadian farmers.
Another complication of intertwined economies.
There are other products that have somewhat complicated supply chains, and I suppose pickled vegetables are an example of that.
Back in Edmonton, Porcher says she'll make do with what she has, but pickles being caught up in the trade war leaves a sour taste in her mouth.
Personally, it's not great. Obviously, I'm gonna be paying more for something that I love to eat. If I can't find them, I'll have to suss out some other options.
The company behind Bix says it's reaching out to U.S. lawmakers to lobby the Canadian government to remove the counter tariff. But with no guarantees in this trade war, businesses and consumers are left to deal with the consequences. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
To the Middle East now, and the global outrage to a deadly Israeli airstrike last night. Among the dead are 6 journalists. Sasha Petrusik has the reaction and Israel's explanation for the targeted attack.
Vowing vengeance, they carry Anas al-Sharif through Gaza, a 28-year-old Al Jazeera correspondent targeted by an Israeli airstrike. It's left many Palestinian journalists shaken.
We know that this is a threatening message for the other journalists to stop covering here.
Al-Sharif and 4 colleagues were killed when a missile struck their work tent. Throughout the war, he was the eyes and ears for many in the Mideast and beyond. But the Israeli military accused him of being a Hamas operative and quickly boasted of their airstrike online, posting reformatted Hamas spreadsheets, which they said prove al-Sharif was a fighter, not a reporter. Al Jazeera rejects the accusation against its team.
They have been working for 2 years under very difficult circumstances, risking their lives in order for one thing to happen, is to bring the truth about what's happening in Gaza to the outside world.
Reporting on this war has been a challenge for 22 months. Israel has refused to allow international journalists in, including CBC News, leaving local Palestinian reporters to cover the war inside Gaza for many media organizations.
The Secretary General calls for an independent and impartial investigation into these latest killings.
They were condemned by the United Nations, Canada, Europe, and media groups.
As long as journalists can be killed with zero consequences, then there is no reason for their killers to stop.
An unprecedented number have been killed here, compared to the casualties in Ukraine over a decade or in Syria over 15 years. The 200 or more Palestinian journalists targeted and killed in under 2 years has been striking. Al-Sharif's high-profile death brings calls for accountability in the occupied West Bank, too, as many worry that Israel may eliminate some of the last witnesses to what's happening in Gaza. Sasha Petrusek, CBC News, Toronto.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are set to meet in Alaska on Friday to discuss the war in Ukraine. As Margaret Evan reports, there has been mixed reaction from Ukraine's allies.
The path to a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia looks as murky as ever, despite the hype around the pending U.S.-Russia summit, especially to those still being forced to flee as Russian troops push their slow but deadly advance in Donetsk, eastern Ukraine. Here, lives being packed up along with family pets as fighting grows closer. You get used to the explosions, but it's still scary, says Vera. Now even more because you think tomorrow it could happen to you in your own home. Analysts say Russian attacks against Ukraine have more than doubled since U.S. President Donald Trump took office last January. On Monday, Trump was boasting about his influence with the Russian president, expected to meet Trump in Alaska on Friday.
I think if it weren't for me, he would not be even talking to anybody else right now.
Not invited to the summit on Ukraine, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, or any other European leader. Critics say the summit in and of itself rewards Putin, the clear aggressor in the conflict.
He will be using it for propaganda goals and for trying to bring Trump on his side. And I see danger in that.
Ukrainian MP Oleksandr Merezhko says Putin has no interest in ending the war.
He is not going to agree to a ceasefire which would allow us to survive as a nation. He can agree only to such kind of ceasefire which will create conditions for him to destroy us only later.
Trump says he'll talk about potential land swaps with Putin, sounding alarm bells for Ukraine and European Union governments that insist there can be no negotiations without Ukraine. Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk told reporters he awaits the outcome of the summit with both fear and hope. An echo of what so many Ukrainians must themselves be feeling. In his nightly address, Volodymyr Zelensky said intelligence reports suggest Russia is preparing for new offensive operations. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
Wildfires are burning out of control in Atlantic Canada, forcing many people to evacuate their homes. We'll have the latest after the break. Wildfires continue to burn across the country and have already scorched more than 7 million hectares of land. In Atlantic Canada alone, at least 23 fires are burning. As Heather Gillis reports, a handful of them are burning out of control in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Already driving thousands from their homes, the wildfire situation in Newfoundland and Labrador is intensifying, now including a new fast-moving fire near St. John's. The smoke is a stone's throw away from homes and buildings, closing part of the Trans-Canada Highway near a crucial power line into the province's largest city.
So I want everyone in that area to recognize and realize that there are potential power interruptions as we go through this. 5 out-of-control fires are raging in the province. In central Newfoundland, the Martin Lake fire could close a vital highway linking to the province's south coast. The province's largest fire in Kingston on the Bay de Verde Peninsula, about 100 kilometres away from St. John's, hasn't grown much since Sunday. It's already destroyed more than 9 homes and forced some 3,000 people to flee,
who are now awaiting word.
We had people telling us that our homes were still in stand in Western Bay, my grandmother's and my mother's, and then we had messages saying your house is gone.
As they steam up the harbor.
Larry Baldwin is trying to provide some solace to evacuees to keep his mind off possibly having to leave his home behind.
It is affecting everybody. Sleep is tough, and people are thinking about your friends that lost their homes, you know. It's tough. Yeah.
In New Brunswick, 3 fires are out of control near Irishtown, not far from Moncton, and near the communities of Bathurst and Miramichi.
The wildfire situation in New Brunswick has gotten worse.
People in the area close to the fires may need to evacuate on short notice. Joanne Gallant and her son Nicholas are in Maple Hill near Moncton.
It's not a lot, but it's for sure not our whole life.
Packing up their most important belongings.
You can pack some, but you can't pack everything. So we're just going to hope, you know what I mean, and keep faith that we're going to be okay.
Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
Much of Canada is in the grip of scorching heat tonight, and that's making the battle against wildfires tougher and triggering health warnings coast to coast. Jayla Bernstein shows us the toll that it's taking.
Sweltering heat mixed with drought has left much of the country scorched and tinder dry.
Got to go with the flow. Too hot, can't move too fast.
I think it's nice, but I can't stay out in it for too long.
Yeah, really hard, yeah.
The rising temperatures broke more than 60 records across Canada in places like Baie-Comeau, Quebec, Edmundston, New Brunswick, and Happy Valley Goose Bay in Newfoundland and Labrador. That kind of heat can pose a very real threat, doctors warn, especially for vulnerable people, like those with health conditions like heart disease.
What we see in many studies is that do not occur outside, they occur inside. And mostly it's people that are older, they have illnesses, they live inside, and they are isolated.
Heat waves like these are getting worse due to climate change.
This is like the dress rehearsal, a dry run of what we're going to see that will be normal in 2050. We're exclaiming about it now because it is so unusual, but boy, it will be the sign of the things to come.
The weather is also forcing farmers to adapt, like this Ontario vineyard that's resorted to hand watering.
Well, you've got to do what you can.
The St. Lawrence River has dropped so low, this boat launch east of Montreal is useless. The low water levels could be one factor in this Sea-Doo accident nearby. Sunday night, 2 people were injured when they crashed into the rocks.
C'est vraiment très beau.
This Montreal area community organizer says people are telling him the beach is magnificent, but it's in a spot where normally there's not a beach. Some reprieve from the heat is expected by Wednesday for much of Canada, but it's all relative. Though nights will be cooler, daytime highs in Montreal and Toronto are expected to stay in the high 20s and low 30s until the end of the week. Jayla Bernstein, CBC News, Montreal.
Steve Young joins us now with another look at the weather. Steve, we are hearing lots about heat warnings. Will they last?
Well, unfortunately, on the west coast of Canada, we have not been spared from the heat at all. We have heat warnings in effect for parts of eastern, southern Vancouver Island, as well as Metro Vancouver, Fraser Valley, and parts of the interior. This is a ridge of high pressure that is bringing with it unseasonably hot temperatures. We're expecting temperatures to reach as hot as the mid-30s in places like Kelowna and in Kamloops. And as we can see here on this map here, places like Lytton, 38 degrees, 31 in Whistler, 31 in Squamish, 32 in Nanaimo, and 33 in Port Alberni. In the Fraser Valley, we're seeing Abbotsford at about 32 degrees. Combined with the humidity, it could feel even hotter than that. But hopefully by about Wednesday, we're expecting this heat to last through tomorrow, Tuesday, but by Wednesday, we should see it taper off a little bit and return to something a little bit closer to seasonal, even bringing with it a chance of rain in places like Whistler and in Lytton. But we also have another issue, which is high winds. Depending on where you are in the province, we could see winds gusting up to 50 kilometers an hour, maybe even 60 kilometers an hour. And combined with the dry and hot conditions that we have, BC Wildfire Service is worried that these high winds, these varied wind speeds, could lead to intensifying fire behavior on wildfires that are currently burning. And just as we were talking about that, we got a notice from the Regional District of Okanagan and Similkameen that they are aware of a fast-moving wildfire near Osoyoos, and residents should should be ready to leave at a moment's notice. Let's take a look at precipitation over the next few days. It's not until about Thursday or Friday that we really begin seeing rain moving over the province, and hopefully that'll bring some relief to the hot and dry conditions that we've been seeing around BC. For tonight, though, the ridge of high pressure continues having an effect, as you can see in Kamloops, 20 degrees and 18 degrees in Campbell River. These are temperatures that are higher than normal because of that ridge of high pressure, so not the most relief, unfortunately, for the hot conditions that we've been seeing. And up north, though, around Fort St. John, Terrace, and also Dease Lake, we do see a chance of showers that could hopefully bring some relief to drier parts of the province. Let's take a look at the 5-day forecast. Lots of sun to take us through to about midweek, and once we get to the weekend, we'll see a chance of rain, and by about the midweek point, Wednesday and Thursday, we should see temperatures return to something closer to seasonal. Baneet?
It's looking like a mixed bag for the week. Thank you so much, Steve.
My pleasure.
And after the break, we'll be looking at the new mural being created to honor the victims of the Lapu-Lapu Day tragedy. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC inbox. CBC is a proud sponsor of the Vancouver Latin American Film Festival. This 11-day festival celebrates the art of contemporary Latin American, Latin Canadian, and Indigenous filmmaking. Tickets at vlaff.org. And CBC Musical Nooners are the perfect summer escape. Wednesdays at noon at the CBC Outdoor Stage. Everyone is welcome. The last show of the season is August 20th.
A new artwork is honoring the victims of the Lapu-Lapu Day Festival tragedy. A local Filipino-Canadian artist has taken it upon herself to create a mural. It's part of Vancouver's Astro Arts Festival and reflects the 11 lives lost. Take a look.
Mara approached us with a concept and had wanted to participate in this and asked if we'd be willing to sponsor the event, and of course we said yes. As the festival organizers, we thought it was important for us that we play a role in how the community heals.
So this mural is dedicated to the victims of the Lapu-Lapu Day tragedy. I have 11 faces in the boat. The boat is inspired from a pre-colonial Filipino artifact called the Manunggol jar that speaks about our burial practices. So we take care of our dead after they passed, and we continue to do that. The person in the front that's sailing the boat is Mayari, who is the Tagalog goddess of the moon. And so the piece is really just for us to kind of feel connected to our ancestors and the spirits that have passed on, and just to know that we're all still connected, and hopefully that gives us all peace.
Sponsoring an artist, a local artist like Mara, I think is part of that ecosystem of things we can do to support the community in that grieving and healing process.
This is going to be here hopefully until the next Astro Festival.
As the memory sort of fades from the public discourse, I think it's really important to honor the victims and those affected by this tragedy, to commemorate and memorialize them in a way that reminds people that these lives matter.
It's been really fun. Yeah, it's been nice to talk to people about my culture and about the studio and all the local artists, and I think it's really important to have events like this so that we can continue to put a spotlight on amazing, talented Vancouver artists.
So that was a 3-day event that saw dozens of volunteer artists take over that alley between the 100 blocks of West 4th and West 5th Avenues. And thank you for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube, and of course our website, that's cbc.ca/BC. I will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. Good night.